One of the more confusing aspects of running is figuring out your easy running pace. In this video, I want to give you a whole bunch of ways to figure out this very valuable zone of intensity so that most of your training is done at the right intensity, at the right pace, so that you can actually get better and get faster. All right, so let's start with the most technical way of determining your easy running pace, which no one is actually going to be able to do, which is measure their lactate levels. And you can figure out where your lactate is stable, and this is your easy running zone of intensity. It's going to be zone 1 or zone 2. These are the zones with stable lactate levels, where the levels of lactate in your blood are not rising. They are stable. You are in what's called a stable physiology. And this is probably the most accurate way of knowing what your easy pace is. When those lactate levels are stable and they're not rising, you're firmly planted in zone 1 or zone 2. Now, the problem with this is that we're not running around with blood lactate meters trying to figure out what our lactate levels are. That's not how runners train. And so we use heart rate often as a proxy. So if you don't actually know your lactate levels, which most of us don't, the next proxy that we can use that approximates lactate levels is your heart rate. Now, you can use some tables, some formulas to figure out what heart rate of yours corresponds to that zone 1 or zone 2 intensity, and simply stay in that intensity. Now, for most runners, this is going to be 75% or less of their max heart rate. Now, if you are going to use this method, there's two important things to know. Number one, you've got to measure your heart rate the right way. Let's not use this, your wrist sensor. This is notoriously inaccurate. Some of us have really hairy wrists. Some of us have really bony wrists. Some of us like to wear our heart rate monitors on the wrist a little bit loose. We don't like a really tight watch on our wrist. And some of us, we just don't have the shape of a wrist that is going to give us really accurate heart rate readings. The gold standard is the chest strap. Having one of those chest straps right on the bottom of your rib cage right here so that it can accurately measure your heart rate close to the source. I'm wearing the next best thing, which is the Coros armband heart rate monitor. This is like 99% as good as the chest strap, so I think it's a very worthy alternative. It's also much easier to wear. It's convenient. I don't mind it whatsoever, and it's something I put on for every single one of my runs personally. I really like it. And so if you have an armband heart rate monitor or a chest strap, that's how you measure your heart rate. Now, the second thing you have to know is what your maximum heart rate is. Now, this is where it gets tricky because you can't use a formula. You actually have to go measure it out in the field. Now, the best way to do this is with a very, very hard middle distance race. Let's say 3K to 5K, anything longer and you might not hit that max heart rate. Anything shorter, like let's say a mile, and I just worry that most runners honestly don't know how to race an event that short and might not push themselves as hard as they potentially could. So try to find one of those, upper distance, middle distance races like a 3K, 2 mile, or 4K or 5K race distance and go to the well. Give it a max intensity, wear your heart rate monitor, and see what it says. That is going to tell you your max heart rate, and then you can use a formula to stay within 60 to 75% of that maximum heart rate. This is probably one of the better ways to estimate your heart rate ranges because you're not using anything subjective. You're not using a formula, you're actually using data that you've gotten in the field. I have upgraded my daily greens mix. You have to try how good Previnex's Gut and Green Superfoods mix is. It tastes way better than my last greens mix, and I'm so happy to have made the switch. Now, not just because it tastes better, but because it has twice the fiber, it has clinically proven ingredients that help with digestion and gut health, and it actually has fewer ingredients. And this is actually a good thing. My last greens mix had dozens and dozens of greens in it, but in such tiny quantities that you're not getting much out of it. I'd rather focus on quality over quantity. And like everything from Previnex, they have clinically studied ingredients that are going to help with your GI system, your digestion. It's going to reduce inflammation and really help with your gut health. So thank you, Previnex, for using clinically verified ingredients. You got to check out their amazing apple flavor on Previnex.com. And if you want 20% off, use code JASONGREENS. And by the way, for every order, Previnex donates a bottle of multivitamins to kids in need. So thank you, Previnex. Now, the less precise way of figuring out your easy effort, but arguably the best, is I'm gonna go on a little bridge here. The best way is just perceived effort. Let's just realize that easy pace isn't actually a pace. Easy is an effort. Easy is subjective. Easy depends on the heat, the terrain, how well recovered you are. And so the actual pace is going to vary a little bit. So we shouldn't stay married to a very specific easy pace range because it's going to change over time. And so if we're using perceived effort, we can use the talk test. That's a really good example where you can speak in mostly complete sentences. You're probably not going to be able to speak in very long sentences. They're going to be abridged, but that's a pretty good way of determining an easy effort. The other way to do this is with what I call the 3 C's. Let's just make sure our running is comfortable. So we don't feel like we're pushing. We don't feel like our heart rate is too high. Our perceived effort is low. It just feels comfortable. Now, the other way to do it is to make sure you feel controlled and conversational. That's where the talk test comes in, and controlled really helps you realize that you shouldn't ever really be pushing at all or trying to maintain a certain pace when you're just running that easy effort. It's really important just to let it flow naturally based on your recovery levels and how you're feeling on the day, and your easy pace will pretty much be what your easy pace is. Now, it's important to note about easy pace that this is one of those paces that is more physiological in nature. It's not like your 5K race pace, which is really just based on what you have done in a 5K race. It's not based on your internal physiology, where your easy pace, another good example is lactate threshold pace or velocity at LT2, if you want to get super fancy. These paces are based on what's going on in your body, lactate levels, heart rate, and it's going to change more slowly than, say, a 5K race pace. So this is one of those paces that you shouldn't update or change or make faster too often. It is something that we should be a little bit more cautious with. And that means I'd rather you be a little bit too slow than a little bit too fast. So if you are wondering, should I be running this pace for my easy effort? It's better just to be a little bit more conservative because, if you go too hard, you're in zone 3. And we are going to talk a little bit about zone 3 and why that is actually okay. But the vast majority of your easy running should be in zone 2 with a little bit of zone 1. And if you're feeling frisky, a little bit of zone 3. But let's remember that easy effort is a more physiological pace. It's going to change more slowly. And I think it should be based on perceived effort, how you're feeling. It shouldn't really be pegged to anything else that's going on with your running. So yes, we can estimate it, but at the end of the day, it really does need to rely on your subjective feeling of what easy feels like. Now here's where I may differ from some coaches. I think some zone 3 is totally fine. In fact, you're gonna get some more mechanical efficiency gains from zone 3. If you're a low mileage runner, you probably can afford more time in zone 3. So, if you're only running, say, 30 miles a week, you actually have more flexibility to run some of your easy runs at that slightly higher intensity. Now, zone 3 is defined by gradually rising lactate levels. So we've moved on from that stable physiology of zone 1 and 2, and now everything is just a little bit harder. Zone 3 is often where your marathon race pace is. So you're probably not going to be running marathon race pace during your easy runs, but you might get a little bit close to marathon pace. And where I like to see some zone 3 running is at the end of a run. If you're feeling good, if you want to pick up the pace, this is where some of your, how you like to execute your training comes into play, and your personal preferences, your style. But if you are feeling good at the end of a run, there's nothing wrong with spending the last mile or two, maybe the last 5, 10, 15 minutes in zone 3 at a slightly faster pace. There's nothing wrong with that, but of course, let's monitor how you're feeling on the key days, the workout, the long run, so that some of that zone 3 running isn't interfering with the paces that you have to hit on the priority workout days. Okay, if you're a runner who might still be struggling to figure out their easy running paces, I want to help you out. Leave a comment under this video with 2 race PRs. Now, here's the caveat. It can't be a marathon PR. It can be a half marathon PR or shorter. And if you give me that data, 2 race PRs that are recent, I will help you estimate a range of effort that I think is going to be appropriate for you for your easy running pace. So I hope this video is helpful as you figure out one of these more difficult things in the world of running, figuring out the pace that you attach to an effort, knowing that pace is objective and effort is subjective. That could be tricky, but I hope this helped.